Welcome to the MMA Nerd Podcast. I am your host, the MMA Nerd. What's up, guys? So it is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. So what's up? It's cool that I'm doing this on Tuesday now, so I can upload it today, and we're just getting closer and closer to Monday, so it'd be cool so we can start great on a Monday, and then hopefully I can get another podcast later on in the week so we can do twice a week. And I hope you guys had a good weekend and you guys are doing well. I'm in a little bit of a pumped up mood, but at the same time not really. Maybe it's the caffeine mixed with tired, so you have that false motivation, that false uh beast mode, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? I'm trying not to curse, but guess what? It just happened. So, cool fights this weekend, and I want to talk about a couple things today. I want to talk about a couple fights from last weekend's card, maybe some MMA news, and a poll that I did on Reddit. So that's one thing I want to talk about. Uh, let's start off with last weekend's fights, and then we'll go to the poll that I did on Reddit, and then maybe end on some news. So, last weekend's fights. I'm going to cover just two fights because I don't want to make this podcast too long, and I want to get to other stuff. So even if it's long, whatever, I don't want to spend on this weekend's card so much. It was a good weekend of fights, as in it was pretty entertaining. I'm gonna start with the Gian Vellante against Maurice Green, and Maurice Green was a lot taller and a lot longer than Vellante, and obviously because Vellante came, I think he fights at middleweight, right? What weight class does he fight at? He fights at light heavyweight. Man, I'm off. But just he looked like he gained so much weight due to a beer belly, pretty much. He did not look in good shape, and he still was able to do well against Maurice Green. He caught him, I believe, in the third or second round, and then things kind of just went downhill from there. Gian Vellante was on, I believe, top half, and Maurice Green was able to get a arm triangle choke from the bottom, but the hand that wraps around the arm that's choking behind the head, so there's one arm wrapping around the arm and in the head, right behind their arm and head, because he's in bottom half, Maurice Green's in top half, and then the other hand that vices around your hand, right? So in a rear naked choke, that hand would normally go behind the back, but this one kind of just curls in to make sure it's tight. And what he did was, with that hand, instead of just curling in, he grabbed Vellante's forehead, and as he squeezed with his hand, the top hand pushed his forehead up. And I think that created a neck crank. Some people thought that Gian Vellante just tapped out because he was fat and out of shape. Maybe it did play a role. Maybe I'm off here. Some people think or thought that he did tap him out with the choke. I don't know. To me, it looked like a neck crank. That's just me. It seemed like a neck crank. It was a small little adjustment, and I know guys that go for that in the gym. And if you have a messed up neck, which most fighters do, and jiu-jitsu guys have, and wrestlers, I'm pretty sure Gian Vellante also has a messed up neck. So I'm pretty sure that contributed to the neck crank. The next fight was Mike Perry and Mickey Gall, and Mike Perry's corner advice was hilarious, and it was just pure gold. It was just so crazy to have his girl in the corner and her just saying you're doing a good job, and he's instructing her where to put ice. And it was just complete silence. It was so weird, but very entertaining. Mickey Gall seemed to improve his striking big time. He has some pretty good check hooks, and his footwork seemed alright. He seemed to have a little more discipline with his strikes and moving his feet, not just staying in the pocket and going wild. It's weird because Mickey Gall is the same age as Mike Perry, but Mickey Gall seems so much younger and inexperienced. Mike Perry seems like a grown-ass man fighting a teenager. It's really interesting how people develop and how they develop with age. It's very weird. Um, yeah. So Mike Perry, as you saw, rocked Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall was way too happy, as always, to play the bottom game instead of pushing on the hips and trying to get up or trying to hold him and attack. And so he's way too eager to be in the bottom. And in high level MMA, especially a guy like Mike Perry that's so athletic, yes, Cowboy Cerrone did tap out Mike Perry. So there was an opportunity that Mickey Gall could do the same, but it's funny because Mickey Gall is a brown belt, and there's a big difference between a high level brown belt and a high level black belt. A high level black belt has unlimited amount of potential, and a high level brown belt can only get so good. If not, there would be a black belt. And we really saw, and you could say this for high level purple belt to high level brown belt, and then high level blue belt to high level purple belt, and high level white belt to high level blue belt. No matter how good they are, there's a ceiling for each belt level, unless they're severely sandbagged, which that's a possibility. But where I'm getting to with this is that when CM Punk fought Mickey Gall, you saw a average blue belt against a pretty fairly good brown belt. And that's what it looks like. And I think some people had in their mind that Mickey Gall's this world champion jiu-jitsu guy, which he isn't. He's a brown belt for a reason. And he's a young guy, and so they thought just because he tapped out CM Punk, he could do that to a lot of people. And I think that he kind of had that in his head too. And it's cool that he did. I think he trained with that one kickboxer. Man, I forgot this guy's name. He's like a man. Well, whatever. It's like in the tip of my tongue. The kickboxer. He's sometimes on Joe Rogan's podcast. Whatever. I think he had him with the help of his striking, and you could see a difference. It was good. But he was, again, like I was saying, was way too happy to be on the ground, and where I was getting to was, even though he's a brown belt and a good one, it's not the same as, let's say, Cowboy Cerrone, which I believe he's been a black belt for a while in jiu-jitsu. Or if not, he's been a pretty high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner for a good amount of time, and pressure tested, and has several submissions from the guard in his career. And I don't think Mickey Gall had that in him. I don't think he had the experience. I don't think he had the technical ability to play a good game on the ground. I think he lacks some things. And yeah, there was a difference, I think, in mentality there and experience. When I saw the matchup, it seemed like a rough matchup for Mickey Gall. And I like Mickey Gall. I don't know, something about him I like. But he lost. And I'm just reading here his decision. I'm not sure if I said Mike Perry TKO'd Mickey Gall. If I said that, I don't know what's up with me. I just remember now the fight ending, them standing up, Mickey Gall did not look happy. So if I said it was TKO or stoppage, I am sorry. I don't know why that went through my head. But we move forward. And remember, I'm not editing this podcast, so if I sound like a dumbass, I'm leaving it in. Because we're just going to get going. We're just going to keep going. So Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. Man, that was a banger of a fight. Dan Hooker could be so much better than what he is. I think a big issue that he has is his understanding of distance. And I say this almost in every single podcast because I do believe most fighters have that problem in MMA. Because the distance that you usually use with big gloves and the distance you usually use in MMA are different. Not only that, but it's hard to develop that sensitivity and understanding ring craft and distance when you do wrestling and boxing, wrestling, jujitsu, and strength and conditioning. You're working on your nutrition, the cut weight, the weight cut. It's hard to prioritize certain things and to get a feel of certain things. It's kind of like most guys in MMA won't have a good berimbolo or a good delahiva, even though those are common in sport jiu-jitsu. And that's because there's not enough time to prioritize that. Like most guys don't have good guards in jiu-jitsu, in MMA. Why? Because they don't have time to develop a good guard. They have to work on their striking, they have to work on their wrestling, they have to work on the little details of those martial arts. So there's no time to work on your guard. So I believe Dan Hooker has a problem with head movement. He keeps his head on the center line. He attacks usually on the center line. And he's very long. And if he could. And this is what sets him apart from Adesanya. Is that Adesanya throws good feints and he has a good understanding of distance, and he throws out false stances, and he does a lot of leaning back and side to side movements. And Dan Hooker is very linear. I can't speak. And he doesn't seem to have the same defense as Adesanya, the same mobility in his upper trunk. His variety of attacks don't really combine too well. One thing he does do really well is he made sure he had better foot positioning, that his lead foot was on the outside of Dustin Poirier's lead foot. And I felt like that did help him a lot, and that helped him get around the cross guard, or kind of like the Philly shell that Dustin Poirier does. Which, going to Dustin Poirier did a good job using his elbows to defend like he always does, and he seemed to, roll with the punches a bit and had nice straight shots. He's a tough dude, which I think helps. And at one point, Dustin Poirier uses his elbows really well, and he just jabs it out there. And at one point, Dan Hooker went for I believe it was a body shot, and Dustin Poirier just threw his elbow out, and it hit Dan Hooker right in the soft spot of his foot, and it seemed to have, if it didn't swell up, it looked very red and very irritated, and that looked painful, and he didn't seem to kick as much after that. Now, that's my breakdown for last weekend, because I want to get into this whole Reddit post, and man, this is going to be so controversial, because I'm not sure if you guys listen to my podcast of, do we look at MMA the right way? And this poll and my social experiment that I was trying to do here was not only to create a narrative and talk to people and have really good high level discussions about martial arts, not only that, but to see what most people believe and think, to see if I was right. And I think I was kind of right on certain points. And also, it's going to be controversial because I believe that MMA striking didn't evolve the right way, in my opinion. And what do you mean by that? What do I mean by that? I think because Japanese kickboxing, Dutch kickboxing, that happened in K1 was very intertwined with pride. And I think also in the United States, kickboxing, like let's say PK stuff or any sort of kickboxing that they would go and do at K1 or whatever. And the history of kickboxing, like when Duke Rufus's brother, which I always forget his name, when he fought the Muay Thai fighter, that made an impact on what I'm gonna say. And the love for boxing in the United States, I believe that made an impact on what developed how the striking evolved in MMA compared to what I think, or how I think it should happen, or how I think it should evolve. And I'm willing to have a discussion. I'm willing to not only change certain views, but outright change my mind and change my viewpoint completely. This is just what I'm seeing and what I'm observing and what I have experienced. And I think that kickboxing and Muay Thai and boxing plays a big role in MMA because of, let's say, like Maurice Smith, and we have Mirko Cro Cop, and we have a lot of kickboxers that came up and revolutionized striking in MMA. And I think their physicality played a part in it too, because they were specimens and athletes, especially that these guys were more heavyweight fighters, and in heavyweight you can get away with a lot more because the mobility is a lot less and the power is a lot more. But now that we have lower weight fighters, and even the heavyweight fighters are more mobile and seem to want to take less risk and damage in their career, I believe a different way to look at martial arts or MMA, and the way to change how we see it or we evolve it, would be in something more along the lines of point karate. And that sounds outright ridiculous. And the first time I thought of this, I felt crazy because I'm like, this doesn't seem to make sense to me. Because I try to look at MMA at every perspective. No, no BSing aside. I've practiced a lot of martial arts and I've had very different weird viewpoints as I've practiced, as I've experienced, as I've kept watching the sport evolve, as I grew older and evolved, because I experienced more, I learned more, I was around people that were of a certain mindset, and I saw their results. And so I just want to talk about this. So I put on Reddit, which martial art for MMA striking, I'm sorry, I'm reading two sentences at once. What is the best martial art for MMA striking foundations? And I put, which striking art do you believe has the best foundations or meta narrative for MMA? Meta narrative. And we're going to go into that because there's a whole debate and a whole concept I've been working with and trying to understand. Now, the choices were boxing, Muay Thai, point karate. I put karate and then next to it point derived because, Kyokushin, which is the next option. Kyokushin is a karate, but very different from point karate. And also, what do you mean by point karate? Because there's like 3 different types of point karate that you can do. But we move forward. Point karate, Kyokushin, Dutch kickboxing, or other. Now, if you can look at this on Reddit. You can go and look for it and look at the results yourself and kind of see the discussions that we were having and whatnot. So, boxing got 531, which is the second most popular. Dutch kickboxing got the third most popular, but the most popular one was traditional Muay Thai. And I said traditional right next to it because I was very particular on what I was talking about. Because I didn't want to confuse people with K1 kickboxing and traditional Muay Thai. I didn't want to confuse people with Dutch kickboxing and Muay Thai. Traditional, Lumpini style Muay Thai. So Muay Thai was number 1, which I completely thought that was going to be the answer. I 100% knew for a fact because that's what most people train for striking when they get into MMA. They believe that Muay Thai has the most tools, and because of that, it's the most realistic for MMA because they have elbows, they have punches, they have knees, they have clinching, they have takedowns, they have knees, they have defense, right? They have punching, they have all the tools that it seems to work for MMA because it has all the tools. It only makes sense. Then boxing to me seemed, yes, of course it's going to be second place because that's probably the most trained martial art in the United States. We have a rich history of boxing, and we all know boxing does well in MMA, right? It has great foundations for footwork. It has a good way to show you how to turn with your punches and use head movement. And then the next one, which I knew also was going to be Dutch kickboxing because everybody likes uh, anybody that knows about MMA knows that Dutch kickboxers are good at kickboxing, and the K1 and Glory are it's a good rule set and it's a popular rule set, and they can do well in MMA. Not always, but there's times where they can. They're just limited because they don't have as much clinching, they don't have as much, and they don't have elbows. But just like just like in MMA, you have good punching and you have good strong kicks, like leg kicks, specifically leg kicks. And then the next one was other, then it was point karate, then it was Kyokushin. So, why am I bringing this up? Why did I even do this? Because every martial art has a meta narrative. So, what do I mean by that? The meta narrative for Muay Thai is number one kicks. Because in Muay Thai, what gets scored the most are body kicks. Why? Because the Thais believe that if you can kick the body, it's way harder than kicking the head and the legs, especially the legs. So some people believe that in Muay Thai, leg kicks are the most important of kicks. And it's not. What they actually score the most are body kicks. And they also score on cuts and damage and clinching and knees from the clinch. So and also trips. So what's most important are trips, clinching, and kicking to the body. And teeps. Teeps are really good for defense, and they have good long guards. They do not work a lot on their hands and head movement unless it's leaning back from kicks. So they get a good distance understanding because they have to learn how to use their teeps and their long guards, and they have a clinching system, so they have to understand it well. Then for boxing, of course, it's going to be well for MMA because of the footwork and the good punching ability that you get that Muay Thai doesn't teach you. So yeah, back to what I was saying about the meta narrative. So that's the meta narrative of Muay Thai. And if you think about it, is being in punching and kicking range at all times like Muay Thai, is that good for MMA? One thing you can say is that, for example, Dutch kickboxing does not work well for MMA. It can because, on average, the average Dutch kickboxer that does well in like K1 or Glory, they will do well in MMA because they have, on average, better striking ability than most MMA fighters because MMA fighters come from a wealth, a vast amount of different disciplines. and most of them don't have the specialty that a Dutch kickboxer has. But we've seen many Dutch kickboxers get knocked out in MMA, and you can see their striking not transfer as well. And why is that? Because they have big gloves and they keep their hands up and they're just throwing punch combinations with hard leg kicks. And there's like no clinching ability and no elbows. And why is that a big factor? Because they fight in the phone booth. Like a Kyokushin fighter, which a lot of people don't know Kyokushin kickboxing comes from. Dutch kickboxing comes more from Kyokushin than Muay Thai. Dutch kickboxing was a mixture of Kyokushin and boxing because in Kyokushin you can't punch in the face, so they just added punches to the face. So it's hard punches to the face and hard leg kicks, which Kyokushin is hard body shots with punches and hard leg kicks. And then you had guys like Ramon Deckers. They went to Muay Thai and they got influenced a bit by the Thais, and there was a mix of culture, and especially K1 brought it together when they brought Muay Thai guys in, even though it wasn't the rule set, which is what confuses people, because there was Thai guys like Wolkout in K1, so they believe that K1 is Muay Thai, which it isn't. But yeah, so Dutch kickboxing is just straight in the phone booth, and they don't have great head movement. They don't have good distance management because that's not how they fight. They're pressure fighters and they're mainly hard punchers because damage and strength and their striking is more important than, let's say, Muay Thai, which in Muay Thai they fight every weekend because they're dirt poor. The kids that grow up in these camps, because they even changed their last name to the name of that camp because they're so poor that they live in there. That's their life is Muay Thai, and they can't spar hard. Unlike Dutch kickboxers or boxers, they can't spar as hard because they have to fight the next weekend. So their style is more relaxed, and there's a deep culture with it. So there's hard lines in the technique. At times, there's guys like what's his name? Sanchai, which has a slightly different feel to his Muay Thai, but still the meta narrative still stays, and that's actually an argument that people are telling me that certain Muay Thai fighters don't have the same style, but the meta narrative stays just like a Dutch kickboxer, just like a boxer. The narrative stays. So I think. So my point here is that I think we should focus more on point karate based meta narrative. And you're like, dude, that is the craziest shit I ever heard. Those guys look like they're flailing, they're hoppity. There's no power in their punches. They put their hands down, chins up. Doesn't make any sense. But I'm not talking about the detail within the martial art. I'm not even talking about the actual martial art itself, like the fighters or the rule set. I'm talking about the complete and total, just the concept of the martial art, the meta movement, the meta understanding and expression. What I see in karate, mainly in the 90s, and later, in a way, because there's some good to what's happening now in the karate scene. It's mainly shitty and there's no strength behind it, and you saw that when they did continuous fighting and combat karate. You saw Agaev, which is a high level karate guy, super high level. And his punches looks there. He fights so they practice linear punches every day, and his punches were like not at all linear, and he didn't know what to do once exchanges did happen. Which actually, just to prove a point, look at his fight that he had when things got rough. He went for takedowns, and what he did a lot was he would go in hard with a cross and then boom, double leg or single leg or a body lock. And you know what it reminded me a lot of? Reminded me a lot of GSP. And why am I bringing that up? And this actually played a big factor in what made me think about this. What made me kind of like change my mind and look at things differently. And GSP always said he was a karate fighter no matter what. He trains Muay Thai, he trains boxing, but he's a karate fighter. And GSP talks about how he wouldn't do well in point karate. He never won a gold in it. And I'm not talking about his accomplishments right now. I'm actually literally talking about like that was a statement he had, so that means he did point karate. And some people say that he did Kyokushin. And yes, he does have a Kyokushin background, but I believe he also hasn't. He did several martial arts because he grew up in a martial art home, or at least he did it starting at a really young age. So he did point karate. Kyokushin is not point karate, so he obviously doesn't just have a point karate background. I mean, a Kyokushin background. He did point karate. His stance is very wide, like a karate fighter when he does fight. He moves in and out like a karate guy. I'm just sorry to tell you guys, but he does. You guys have a blind spot when it comes to looking at this. And Joe Rogan talked about it. He said once these point karate guys come into play, when they start really getting into MMA, there's going to be people having a hard time hitting them. And now some people will tell me, well, those fighters are more athletes, and those fighters are more their body's meant for it. That's only them. But they will never say that for Muay Thai or boxing. They will say those are fundamentals that works for everybody. And some people will just say, no, well, none of it works. No meta narrative works. It's just on the fighter and their, how they express themselves. And they all have a great point, especially the last one. Because the fighter makes the fights. He's the one that he or she develops themselves into their optimum capacity. And what do I mean by that? They get the tools that they have and try to express it the best. So even if someone does come from a boxing background, they're going to look different than the next guy. But the meta narrative stays, and how they build upon those foundations will decipher what type of fighter they will be. So, for example, Justin Gaethje, some people kept saying it was kickboxer. His coach is a boxer, and he fights mainly at a boxing range, and he's able to do leg kicks at punching range. So he throws kicks, but the meta narrative is he's a boxer mainly. The way his foundations are set up. So, why do I think point karate would be a good foundation? Because I think in MMA, when you have those small gloves, you can't be in long exchanges. And karate teaches you how to go in. In case you guys didn't know, sorry, I just burped. In case you guys didn't know, the motto in karate is one shot, one kill. And they believe that you should be able to hit your opponent and kill them with one shot. Stop them on right there. Boom. And that's why they practice the same technique over and over and over and just fine-tune it and fine-tune it and fine-tune it. And you see this expressed in kata a lot. They just refine the movements. And that's what kata's for. It's to refine your movements. It's archetypal movements standing, just like how in jiu-jitsu you have archetypal movements on the ground, like the Budokan movements or the gimnástica natural that was done in the 90s that Hickson was doing. These are archetypal movements, and they're just refining it. So that's another topic that I will get into. Like I said in the other podcast, katas and movement training, there is a place for them, and it shouldn't just be thrown. Now, is it 100% useful? I don't know, but there's a discussion to be had there. Now, the art of one shot, one kill plays a big role because if your whole meta narrative is to come in, hit somebody, and come out with minor exchanges and not being able to get hit. And remember, coming in and out doesn't mean just straight in and straight out. It doesn't mean just using speed. You don't have to be athletic because you're not coming in linearly. You can come in at angles. It's called Tai Sabaki. So, if that's your meta narrative is to come in and out and to hit somebody, which GSP did really well, and what GSP added was not only could he come in and out, but he could come in and once he was in, he was taking you down. And that's why I was bringing up Agaev, because when he didn't have the capability to continue exchanging because that's not in his DNA, and they have super small gloves. So he just kept taking the guy down over and over, and I feel like in MMA, I feel like that's why the meta narrative of coming in and out and being able to hit them and not getting hit is so important. But we have to also look at head movement, foot positioning, adding and incorporating certain strikes, being able to handle the clinch, and if there is a long exchange, how do you deal with it? A lot of how to deal with it is takedowns, unfortunately. So that's why people say, what is the most important grappling background? And I don't even have to do a poll on this. In MMA, not in self-defense, not in an unlimited time match. In MMA, right now, 5 minutes, 5-minute rounds, 3 rounds or 5 rounds. What is the best grappling martial art? We can say jiu-jitsu because of submissions, but I would say wrestling. And this comes from a guy that has a background in jiu-jitsu. Just like this comes from a guy that has a background in boxing and Muay Thai, specifically Muay Thai. So I had to do a 180 on this. This wasn't just I grew up indoctrinated into the karate and Muay Thai cult, into their culture. Not at all. Not at all. Not one bit. This is me having to open my eyes and really look at the truth here and talk to people and analyzing things. And when you look at karate fighters, they tend to get hit the least and get the least amount of damage. And that is so important when it comes to fighting in MMA. So what I was getting to was, if you have a wrestling background, or let's say you have some wrestling, which you need to have if you're an MMA fighter, if your base isn't wrestling, or it's not and you're not working to make it your base, well then, dude, you can't control where the fight goes. And you're gonna be on your ass on the ground, laying on your back, hoping the ref stands you up. Or you're gonna be stuck standing with a guy that's lighting you up. So you better be creative with the Eminari roll, pulling guard somehow, doing a Ryan Hall. Or you better work on your wrestling also. And that's what I say. Work on your wrestling. So to me, meta narrative wise, the footwork and the understanding of distance and understanding the in and out, and once you're in, you're in, and once you're out, you're out. That side of karate, which I hate to almost call it karate because I just feel like it's putting it in a box, and I want to make it clear that I'm speaking of many martial arts, but I'm not putting what I think is good striking for MMA in a box. I'm not saying go and become a point karate fighter. I'm not saying that. I'm saying understand this tool. Understand that there's a different footwork that could be used for MMA because we're not boxers. We don't fight at punching range. We're not kickboxers. We don't fight at kicking range. We fight at a further range because not only is it impossible to fight 5 rounds, so you do need some space to breathe at times, but the closer you get to somebody, the more tools they have. Way more than, let's say, Muay Thai because you have double legs, you have these wrestlers coming at you, and you have the cage there. So mobility, being able to stay away from somebody, that's important. And once you do come in, you better have some grappling. And I think that's where the wrestling comes in. So I think the two most important things to practice, believe it or not, is point sparring of a variety. Not always just point sparring, obviously. You do continuous at times, but mainly just situational training to coming in and out with punches, kicks, or takedowns, and then having wrestling. So you could dictate the match and you're not lost when you're in and you don't have to exchange. Now, can every fighter do this right now on the UFC roster? No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying every fighter on the roster can just right now go to damn Shotokan school, a damn Goju-Ryu school, and just develop this. I'm talking about for the next couple generations. If we want a couple more GSPs, because if you're not looking at just GSP and what he's doing, you're behind. If you're just looking at the champions that are at right now, you're behind. Because we have a proven product named GSP. And he was the safest fighter, the least damaged fighter in his prime, right? When he was in his prime. And the most successful and kept his title reigns. And then came back and won the middleweight title. Doesn't matter how he did it, who he fought against. It was how it was done. And what he did accomplish. And there's something there. So, you need jiu-jitsu because once you do take it to the ground, you can't just be getting submitted. But there's a whole nother level of jiu-jitsu once you're in MMA. Look at the way that GSP ground and pounds. Look at the way he handles it. And he handles it the same way. You're either all the way in or out. When he's in the guard, he's smothering or he's hovering and throwing elbows. Like in a can opener situation. Man, you guys need to understand that understanding of distance also transfers for grappling. Grappling on when you're standing, grappling when you're on the bottom. So these are a few things I just want to bring up, and I want to go more into the poll, and that didn't happen, and eventually I'll go into it, especially if I get some good questions. I just believe that we can't be comfortable at a punching and kicking range in MMA, and I believe that we need to disguise the way we attack with better footwork, and then things are obvious, like good feints, good punching technique, good kicking technique, and all that. But the mobility, to me, is key. And can you get that mobility with boxing? Yes and no. You can get good mobility with boxing, but your mobility and understanding is always going to be at a punching range. And to me, that will always be a flaw. Because once you're in punching range, you're in takedown range too. And unless you're a high-level wrestler, then you won't be stopping the takedowns. And even if you are a high-level wrestler, like Tyrone Woodley, for example, that likes to fight punching range, when you find another dude that has just as good wrestling or better than you, and you're always in punching range, you got a problem. You got a serious problem. When all you do is round kicks to the body, we got a problem. When all you do is stay in the phone booth and just throw hard leg kicks, we got a problem. Because the distance is different. The amount of error is just infinite. So you're either safe or you're not safe. You're either in or you're out. And we got to understand that. And we got to minimize the exchanges that happened. that happen in the fight because there's so much room for error. You're not a perfect fighter. You don't have the perfect inside fighting no matter what. Because with those small gloves, things are just, they're dangerous. And so on the poll, the first, man, it's so funny how the internet just, I put this poll out here and we have great discussions, so many cool things that could have been upvoted, but the most upvoted thing was, I think Ngannou has the best striking foundation. It's a combination of boxing and having atomic bombs connected at to end of your wrist. I don't know what he meant by that, but he meant to say he has atomic bombs connected to his hands, and he has boxing, I guess. That was a lame post and not mentally stimulating. And it goes to show some people are weak sauce on the internet and everything's a troll and funny to people. And I'm glad people are enjoying it and having a great time. But that to me doesn't really, I don't find entertainment. So MMA news. Let's see. There doesn't seem to be any crazy news going on. Mainly John Kavanaugh talking about Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje close to being done. That would be a cool fight. I would like to see Khabib versus Gaethje, even though I believe Khabib can take him down and just beat him up. Conor versus Justin Gaethje would be a pretty fun fight to see. Yeah, so I'm just being quiet trying to look at these news, but I think I'm just going to stop here. I'm going to stop around, I'm always stopping around 45 minutes, so that's cool. Alright guys, so that was the MMA Nerd Podcast, and please like, subscribe, ask me questions, and have a great week. Thank you guys again, and please just share if you can, and please just like and subscribe because I'm trying to get them views. Thanks guys, love you, bye.